with that, we're going to turn it over to Mr. David Gokhshtein, who is going to give us the panel on Ethereum and smart contracts.
Hey guys, how's it going today? All right, I want to welcome everybody. Jennifer's here, Oz is here, Dustin is really funny, he's here, and there he goes. We'll be talking about how smart contracts can fundamentally change business as we know it. Real quick, I just want you guys to go ahead and really introduce yourselves rather than me do it. Oz, go ahead. You go first, and then I'll go ahead and lead into Jennifer and Dustin.
Sure. My name's Oz Felton. I am the CIO for PAC Global. I'm also the interim VP of product for RD, which is Radiologics, which is a healthcare blockchain. I'm a member of the Council Exchange Board of Trade, which is working in the United States blockchain policy. And I advise a couple of companies. We're also trying to work on a couple of UBI solutions, leveraging personal data that really are kind of in line with Brittany Kaiser's Own Your Data Foundation.
That's awesome, Oz. And Jennifer, how's it going?
Hi, David. Thank you. Hi, everyone. It's great to be here. My name is Jennifer Zegel, and I'm a partner at the law firm of Klein Bard, and we're located in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. And I focus my practices in the area of estates and trust law and also business succession planning. And over the last few years, I've developed a subspecialty in digital asset planning. I also launched a podcast a year and a half ago called the Digital Planning Podcast, where myself and two other attorneys explore all things digital in connection with estate planning, business planning, and estate administration. So you can find the Digital Planning Podcast on all major podcast outlets, and I hope you downloaded it and subscribe. I'm also the chair of the Philadelphia chapter for Diversity in Blockchain. And Diversity in Blockchain is a national 501c3 organization, and we have chapters forming across the country to really help raise awareness about blockchain, educate people, and really promote an inclusive environment. So it's great to be here, and I hope everyone's doing well and staying safe in these uncertain times.
Thank you so much, Jennifer. And Dustin, you're muted, but now you're not. Let us know what you're all about.
So yeah, my name's Dustin. I'm head of mining intelligence for CoinGenius. And so I've been mining cryptocurrencies over the last 4 years, and people kind of look up to me because of that. And I do a lot of research around proof of work and just mineable cryptocurrencies in general. And so I do have like an educational blog, cryptominertips.com, that I've been building out. It's basically just a website that can take somebody that's new to cryptocurrency mining and educate themselves, and kind of have like an all-one place to basically just learn how to start mining cryptocurrencies. So but yeah, super grateful to be here, and thank you guys for having me on the panel.
So I'll start off with the first question, guys. What's your take on Ethereum 2.0?
Oz, do you want to go first?
Yeah, well, I think Ethereum, there's two sides to this. There's the fact that we're actually looking at updating a lot of the protocols on the technical side. But I think the more interesting thing that's coming out of this is Peak Hyber. And what Peak Hyber is looking to do is, my door is ringing. What Peak Hyber is looking to do is basically bring Monero-style decentralized finance security in terms of what your individual utility would be for the protection of cryptocurrency to the Ethereum blockchain. And so I think in between this and then looking at some of the protocols that are parallel to Lightning inside of the Ethereum network, you have to look at all three of those things in praxis together. The utility of this could be huge, right? Because terms of cryptic transactions, secure transactions, there's additional utility now that can come into the Ethereum network. But then it becomes a question of, of the thousands of projects that are out there right now, right? One, who is upgrading to Ethereum 2.0? Two, if you look at a lot of the alts that are out there, some of them have gone from proof of work to proof of stake. There have been complete coding changes in the architecture of these tokens, and some of them just really don't have a value proposition anymore. So I think it's one factor to look at, but we're also going to have to evaluate really what the adoption curve is, what the upgrade curve is. I mean, if you look at tokens that are forked off of Bitcoin, a lot of them are operating on 1.3 when 1.7 plus is, sort of the standard. So, it raises questions on the one side, but on the opposite side, I think it opens a tremendous amount of opportunities for not just the creation of new products, but the creation of subrogate, like, either asset-based or asset-tied products, security, and then opportunities to extend to privacy.
Awesome. Jennifer, Dustin, yeah, you want to chime in on that, or?
I was just going to kind of piggyback off of what Oz was saying. So I'm more interested in what's going to happen to the price of Ethereum when it does switch over. I think I haven't read the new update. Are they planning on switching to like a proof of stake, proof of work hybrid model for a little bit and then slowly phasing out of proof of work altogether? Because that's the last that's what I heard the last time I researched it. And so I don't know if they're switching over to, if their plan is to switch over to full proof of stake. But, we've seen other projects in the past do this, and then for whatever reason, the project loses momentum, or, just people lose interest in it and the price kind of goes down. So my biggest question and concern that I kind of wonder about it is, is the price, is that going to affect the price in a negative way or a positive way? I see a lot of people, there are some people kind of prepping for 2.0 because you got to have, supposedly 32 Ethereum to be able to stake it. So I do see a lot of people doing that, but, I think that there's something to be said about proof of work coins and their ability to hold their value just by being a proof of work backed by electricity and mining instead of, like a proof of stake concept. So, yeah, I'm kind of interested to see where the price goes on that after they do make the switch.
Jennifer, any thoughts?
Sure. So just piggybacking on what Oz and Dustin said, kind of taking it more of a practical perspective. I mean, I think it can solve a lot of scalability issues and fee prices that we're seeing right now, but then it can also create some other issues and concerns with security and potential hacking attacks on different shards. And so it'll be interesting to see the evolution of how those types of concerns are going to be dealt with as this evolves. And I think it's going to be over the next year or even 2 years before it's fully, transformed into Ethereum 2.0. It's going to be a slow process, but that's good because it gives some time to really work out some of the issues and help protect, what it's trying to accomplish and not have more challenges than it's initially solving.
You think PayPal's going to go ahead and use Ethereum?
So it's interesting. I talked to PayPal and Venmo about 3 years ago about this when one of my buddies was setting up special projects for their CEO, and they were, kind of lukewarm on the idea. And if you really look at the quotes from PayPal going back a couple of years, they basically talked about Bitcoin being the biggest scam out there.
Yeah.
I think that the challenge, and sorry if I cut you off, Jennifer, but I think the challenge that you're going to have is that they're going to have to get a breadbasket of the top tokens in order to make this usable. And then they're going to have to implement a soft wallet solution that's reasonably secure. And given the fact that I'll just, on the security, I just want to add one other thing, the Ethereum security side. If you take a look at the number of tokens that have been stolen from testnet nodes, okay? One of the reasons I think they're going to the proof of stake model with sharding, which Dustin, I think will definitely affect prices, because this is changing the paradigm for how people access the token. But what it's doing is it's moving it more towards a uniform currency perspective, which also I think is going to affect projects that are on it. And on every single project, if it maintains the current code base, is going to have to figure out what their future is, and that could not bode well for some of them. And I think, Jennifer, you might have some more commentary on that. Just in terms of like what some of the legal ramifications are for investors and folks that are involved in these projects. But there's a number of challenges that are going to come forward pretty quickly.
Jennifer, you want to piggyback on that?
I mean, I think just generally with smart contracts, there is a lot of uncertainty with legal ramifications. I mean, typically contracts are governed by state laws. and state laws are very, very different. There's only some states that have actually recognized smart contracts or business records on a blockchain being acceptable business documents and available for evidentiary purposes. And I think as we have an evolution of legislatures at a state level adopting and accepting smart contracts, we're going to have some more certainty. But right now, I think there's a lot of uncertainty on how enforceability issues will come about, jurisdictional issues, venue issues, and some of that can be built into the smart contract to account for those things. But it really will impact all areas, even with Ethereum 2.0. I mean, these are things that are constructs that, although certain issues with minimizing intermediaries, in traditional contracts that smart contracts can resolve, it's creating other new challenges that need to be addressed.
Let me ask this question. Where do you think miners will go from Ethereum after the phase changeover to POS?
Yeah, I wanted to answer that question. I seen it over there in the chat. So, because we get asked this question a lot, because I think a lot of people kind of fear it's like, well, what can we mine if we can't mine Ethereum anymore? And the answer is pretty simple. I mean, there's a lot of other great projects that you can mine right now. Ravencoin is a fine example of that. And then you got other coins, other projects like Grin and Beam, just to name some, that are other than Ethereum. So there's definitely probably at least 4 or 5 other solid projects that you can mine other than Ethereum. So just, the hash power is going to go to one of those 5 projects. Whichever is the most profitable at the time is probably going to be what, 80% of the miners go to.
Oz, your thoughts?
I would, I think what's going to be interesting about this is it's more of a question of what's the shift going to be to alternative currencies or alternative cryptos. Dash is still going to become, I think, hot and strong. And also, if this happens, once a full timeline for the deployment of 2.0 is slated, I mean, miners, just I think in general are going to be looking at a couple different aspects of this, and it's going to depend on what kind of hardware they're using, also where they're mining inside of the world, and what their power access costs are and their infrastructure management costs. But they may just pull completely. They're going to pull once the methodology changes, the mining's gone.
Gotcha.
And the question is, what's the cascading impact going to be to alts that were built on top of Ethereum to begin with? Secondarily, there hasn't been any full details released as to if the proof of work methodologies will still continue once they go to staking and sharding. And I understand why they're doing this. They are doing this to utilize it as a currency. They're doing it to utilize it in more secure fashion. They're leveraging sharding because the new quantum computers can crack 256 in like 17 seconds. But the question really becomes one of adoptability, velocity, and developers, right? Will the developers continue to build on the platform, or will it go the way of EOS? And we saw that, with the whole bot scandals last year, right? Where you had a bunch of different apps, you had a bunch of different traction, EOS was popping up to 14, and then all of a sudden, a lot of transparency came out, and people saw that, the emperor had no clothes. So the question really will continue to be, one, what is the utility for the mining community? And 2, longer term, where does the mining community go? I look at Dash, I look at Digibyte, I look at a variety of tokens like that still have, Wax maybe even, that have some utility, and they have the velocity, and they have the ability for miners to generate value. But the mining industry is going to be shaken up by this.
Jennifer, what do you think? I'm going to ask you this question. The market behavior for Ethereum, what do you think is going to be like once it goes over to 2.0?
I mean, I think we have more people operating on the network, that's causing the issues as to why it needs to evolve and allow for more people and players to be all on the network at the same time and transactions to go more smoothly. So I think as mainstream gets more comfortable with general tenets of blockchain and interacting in this way, which I think is helping, one positive of all of the global pandemic and COVID is really having people more open to talking about evolution of traditional contracts in the digital sense. And so I think that's going to help propel traffic on the Ethereum network. And as we evolve through this, we're going to have smart contracts that ultimately will more reflect business practices. I mean, smart contracts are great, but they're not applicable for every situation, and there's certainly complex contracts are going to be very, very difficult to reduce to code. And then we have issues with oracles or side chains or lightning networks that further complicates that. To kind of give you an example as part of this just evolution process, with COVID, I'm sure you've had a lot of traditional contracts that people were unable to make payments, during this time. And it was a business decision to either penalize them or allow them to not waive any late penalties because the value of the commercial relationship or just human understanding of the global pandemic and the issues that it caused. People can understand that and take effective measures to amend contract terms to not implicate or waive those types of penalties. Whereas in the smart contract situation, unless the coding actually is built in that you can have easy channels to amend or terminate the agreement, if you have a situation like this, the contract's going to be, autonomous. It's going to be self-executing. And if there are these larger issues at play, it's going to be very, very difficult, if not impossible, to have that human element in terms of forgiving or waiving late payments. And so I think that also needs to take place in terms of overall market trends as we expand into this area in different industries.
You believe we dropped the ball during COVID by not having used blockchain and smart contracts to go ahead and get the right data on the number of cases that we did have in the United States? And that question goes for anybody who wants to go ahead and Dustin. I'm gonna go Dustin, since you're hiding over there. Dustin, that's for you.
What's that? Sorry. What was the question?
The question was, you think we dropped the ball by not using blockchain and smart contracts to go ahead and basically figure out the correct data? We were speaking about COVID-19. Wouldn't it have been helpful to go ahead and use blockchain and smart contracts to calculate the right data, the right figures for COVID-19 and get accurate numbers?
Do I think that blockchain could have improved that scenario
Absolutely.
in some shape or fashion, I guess is the question.
Yeah.
I absolutely do think that. I don't think that we have the right infrastructure and mindset in place to do that at this moment. But I think that absolutely, without a shadow of a doubt, there's definitely some form of blockchain technology that could have provided way better transparency than what we got currently, without a shadow of a doubt, right? How? That's the big question, right? Like, what's that look like, right? We don't really have a good example to go off of. I can't think of any projects off the top of my mind that are really doing that to provide, real statistical data that's going to be, fully transparent, that can't be altered or fudged in any way. So, I have seen some projects. It does seem like some projects, because of this, are now looking at building out platforms that can provide that kind of data for that kind of scenario. So it'll be interesting to see if, as we have another pandemic, maybe the next pandemic.
I'm gonna stop you.
I hope not either. I'm not wishing this evil on anybody. And
you want to be in quarantine? Good luck. Good luck.
Yeah.
With you. Have fun.
But I do think that there's going to be platforms out there that, because of this scenario, they're going to be building out, a blockchain specific with a specific use case around that. Now you mentioned something about smart contracts. I don't know how smart contracts can really fall into that, right? Like,
I'm gonna get into that if we have some more time left.
Yeah, could I actually just hop on there? So
Yes.
someone had mentioned Chainlink. There's also VeChain, and I'm working on Radiologics. Well, let me tell you what the challenges are inside of this space. And John Souza is also working on a COVID testing platform that's pulling together basically a large number of the tests out there and putting those on the blockchain. And that was just announced last week. There's 4 areas of challenge. One is that the testing is oftentimes done by independent companies that are using cheaper tests, and they're storing some of the data, but some of the data is paper, and some of the data is stored in databases, and some of the data is stored in some sort of a hybrid. Two is the problem of the billing systems on the back end. Okay, so for example, Epic, which is one of the hospital billing systems and the medical billing systems, has about 40% wrong data in it, meaning that people were misbilled for stuff. Okay, and they can't charge people for these things. And then in addition to that, we're dealing with hospital bureaucracy and purchasing inside of that. And then beyond that, there's the whole acquisition process of how they're doing things. And in doing some work in PPE, and then working with the healthcare radiologics, the healthcare blockchain, the challenge is first, how do we put the blockchain on the process by which people buy, everything like Iggy swabs, which is the swab that they stick down your nose or your throat to basically test this thing. And now they're testing your butt with it. But they have a test process by which they put that inside of a couple of mediums. There's also multi-process tests. So that whole process is not technologized by any shape of the imagination. And what we're looking to do is to bring in something that has about 7 modules that allows us to, one, do corporate communications in a secure way, very much like Reuters Messenger did for the trading space. But then the remainder of this is it has to plug into all of this legacy spaghetti code, right? Like half of these systems that these hospitals are running date back decades. I mean, it's like dealing with the plane and transportation management systems by which you book. You have people booking. Orbitz leverages a bunch of systems in the back end that all look like VAX VMS screens. They're like green screens. So that's kind of the first challenge that you're dealing with. And then the second thing is the payments and entitlement systems that kind of get wired into this. So through the Council Exchange, one of the things that I can talk about is the federal government is looking to bring in a blockchain solution in 21 that is going to go from the Office of Management and Budget down. So that's how like expenditures go into multiple agencies, get paid out to Medicaid, paid out to a lot of these other things. But I think there's transparency issues that blockchain can help with. On the COVID side, you've got competing factors. Apple and Google have their own systems by which they're tracking you. The question is what kind of data are they aggregating on you? Google has purchased the entire database of the National Health System in the United Kingdom. So they can obviously do some cross-reference and correlation on you. But there's a big issue here, and I go back to what Brittany Kaiser talks about, and what Jennifer has talked about, which is some of the diversity aspects here. Who owns your data? Who has access to that data? Who's going to have the provenance of that data? What's the HEP compliancy for that data? And what kind of orders have been signed by state officials that are giving different mandates to what the recourse that you have is on that data? That's what really has to be challenged here. Look, take a look at Radiologics, take a look at VChain, take a look at Chainlink. There's a couple other players that are out there. Even IBM has a solution that has gone into healthcare, and that integrates with older legacy IBM solutions that go back decades. But then you have asymmetric technology. You might have SAP, you may have Bond, you may have JD Edwards, you may have all these other things that are still running in the back end of these hospitals, plus different payment systems. That's kind of the biggest hurdle to get over. And what I like about the Radiologics platform is it's got the modules to integrate, but this is going to take about 3 or 4 different cycles of steps in order to get to something where the blockchain is homogeneous throughout the healthcare systems, from how you buy stuff, how you test people, how you maintain the security of HEPA data, and then also how you maintain the access of that data, right? Who has access to these medical records inside of the system, and can you track that kind of stuff? This is a solution that does, but for the remainder of solutions that are out there, that question is still going to arise. And to talk about what some of the stuff that Dustin's talked about, but really, Jennifer, this is your ball of wax with the legal side. Half of the legal stuff is not sorted out yet, and it is going to be a terrific problem to figure that out.
I'm going to stop you right there, Oz, and I'm going to ask Jennifer to piggyback on what Oz just said.
So, Oz, I think your comments were spot on, and thank you for them. What I'll add, just generally speaking about this topic, is if you're interested in it and you want to talk more, or you want to hear some more experts about it, we are having a Diversity in Blockchain virtual event on July 7th. And the topic is blockchain-based technology, I can't talk. Blockchain-based technology to advance and enhance global insights past COVID-19. And so
Say
we'll be
that
talking
10
a
times
lot.
fast.
I know, right?
Exactly, right?
Let me try again. I got it. So it'll be a panel discussion, and if you're interested, you can message me and I can send you the Zoom link or the Eventbrite link to register. Steve McKeon, who also will be a presenter later, is on the board of Diversity and Blockchain, and he can also put you in contact with the link. And the panel is going to be discussing all of these issues in greater depth, and also contract tracing and uses of that with blockchain technology. But going back to the legal aspects of all of this, it is a really, really big issue because there's medical compliance and there's HIPAA, there's all of these different factors that are regulated. And so when you have requirements to have data transmitted in a certain fashion, especially with private healthcare information in this type of space, which is unregulated if you're working in a public blockchain, there's a lot of different issues. And it's not clear with GDPR and California Consumer Privacy Act and certainly other privacy laws as state legislation evolves in this area, how those types of laws are going to impact having secure data, especially with healthcare information being transmitted.
Real quick, last question before we go and we wrap this up. And I honestly did enjoy our time here. What do you see Ethereum in the next 5 years? It has to be like literally 15 seconds. Oz, you first. Go.
I think it becomes a store of value. I think that a lot of the projects that you see on it either pivot or change paradigms. And I think that the long-term perspective is still questionable, but there's a lot of opportunity in terms of leveraging faster transaction on underlying stacks to this and the privacy aspects that are coming from Peak Hyper.
Jennifer, your take?
I think this is going to be and produce huge disruptive impacts across multiple industries, the government, and peer-to-peer transactions. And I think there still needs to be a huge evolution in the technology and in the legal landscape around it. And throughout the evolution of smart contracts, generally speaking, on Ethereum and not, it's really important to integrate rights and obligations owed under smart contracts in estate and business succession planning. And I'll be diving into this topic more tomorrow in my educational breakout session on the basics of digital asset planning, and I hope you join me.
Awesome. And Dustin.
Yeah. So Ethereum in the next 5 years. I don't know how it's going to happen, but I do see some form of smart contract that runs on the Ethereum blockchain being at least on the verge of being mass adopted within the next 5 years, just because it does solve a huge potential use case. And, it's just a more efficient way of for some of these businesses, it's going to be a way more efficient way of operating. So that's where I see Ethereum in the next 5 years.
Awesome. I just want to thank you guys for coming on today. You guys were awesome, very informative. Oz, Jennifer, Dustin, honestly, a pleasure. My name is David Gottstein. I'm the founder of G Media. Coin Genius, thank you very much, Jeremy, Christine, for having me here to moderate this really awesome panel.
Absolutely. Thank you guys. Really appreciate it. If you guys hop off, we're going to get underway with this pitch competition, trying to stay on track, but great content. Thank you guys.
Thank you. We'll see you.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.